Hello everyone, thanks for joining me in this video. Today being Wednesday the 26th of November 2025. Wishing you out there happy Yuletide seasons. Of course, we have an interesting subject to discuss in today's political rumbles. Without missing words, my audience will agree with me that light and darkness has no meeting point. The likes of Sheikh Gumi, his ideology and what he stood and represents does not in any way align with that of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is a clear, different species, personality, and entity whose virtues and quality, of course, is being endeared by all. Sheikh Gumi is a man who we have seen his antecedents over the years. It's rather unfortunate that he's trying to live in the denial of the reality, trying to become relevant when it is not needed. He has questions. Nigerians have questions begging for an answer, which invariably Sheikh Gumi should provide those answers to these questions. One of these questions are, what are the justifications for Sheikh Gumi supporting the abduction, kidnapping of school girls?
When you ask a battery of questions, how do you expect me to convince you? Let me step one by one. IPOB is attacking the police, is attacking the army, is attacking INEC, government institutions, killing our men in service. And the herdsmen are kidnapping children, not to kill them, to get money. So how can you compare somebody who's killing our gallant men in the armed forces directly, attacking them, to somebody who's kidnapping children to make money, not to kill them?
Justifying that the bandit, the Fulani terrorists, has the right to kidnap as a means of sustenance. You can imagine that, telling the world that the Fulani oligarchs, the Fulani terrorists are impoverished by the northern political oligarchs who should be held responsible. When has it become a norm that for you to survive, you must inconvenience and subject other citizens, innocent citizens and their families, their children, to such psychological, emotional, and physiological torture? Some majority of them lost their life in the course of this. Gumi supporting, justifying by every means possible the kidnap, the abduction, the criminality of such degree, such levels in human existence in the 21st century, that they have the right, of course, to kidnap, abduct, and molest, harass sexually their victims just because they wanted to extort money from law-abiding citizens. And some persons have asked, why is Gumi still walking on the street without being arrested, being behind the bars? That is criminality. That is a war crime. That is one of the heinous crimes against humanity, not just Nigerians. But see a man standing for such level of criminality without condoning such barbaric and primitive tendency. This is purely criminal act, and anyone aiding and abetting such should be called up by the DSS or intelligence agency and appropriate authorities for questioning and prosecution, because you cannot inconvenient, you cannot constitute, of course, national threat to national security, and yet you are seen parading yourself as the president, as the almighty, untouchable, and the rest of them, let alone having the effort, the moral standard, the moral consciousness to demand, to ask for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu should show some level of remorse. Whereas you have not expressed any level of remorse by supporting terrorism, supporting barbaric tendencies and wickedness against humanity, justifying the abduction of children, of school girls. with such level of traumatizing, of course, experience that will live with them all through their lifetime. And yet the government have not done anything about that. What's a conspiracy of silence? Honestly, the part of the government, the DSS are aware of all this statement, justifying that the Fulani are just kidnapping. They are not like IPOB. How will they be like IPOB? IPOB implies the indigenous people of Biafra. How will they indulge in such demeaning, humiliating, horrifying, and disdain nature or attitude of kidnapping people so that they can eat and survive? What happens to them? What happens to the allocations going to the northern people, northern region? The north has the highest share of the allocations on monthly basis going to the north. Why has the political elite not utilized them to better the lots of the northern people? The only resort and justifying criminality. This is pure criminality. Pure criminality, extorting, paying ransom, subjecting the children to such horrifying situations just to extort from the people. They often end up exploiting the people, the young ones, sexually selling them to slave and other forceful marriage and the rest of them. It is rather unfortunate in a safe society where there is accountability, the rule of law, and everybody is equal before the law, and people are being held accountable for their actions, abetting terrorism, criminality under the disguise of herdsmen. They are not herdsmen. What is the definition of herdsmen? Herdsmen don't go after such level of criminality. Herdsmen are known for rearing their herds and cattle and of course going about their legitimate business. But these ones are pure terrorists, and Gumi is justifying them, hiding them under such nomenclature as herdsmen, which most of them have confessed that they were on their duty post and the instrument, certain personality within the cycle of influence or political, within the corridor of power, handed them over AK-47 and the rest of them. They swear by the gods they worship Allah. Said that is what happens. They never expected, they have never been living such a life, but they were forced to do whatever they are doing. They handed them over AK-47, lethal, sophisticated weapons to use it against the innocent indigenous communities. Here comes Gumi, a cleric, Islamic cleric, rather than condemning such dastard act, is justifying the criminality with such brazen impunity and boldness. I mean, it is rather unfortunate today that Nigeria does not practice, of course, or adhere to the rule of law. Otherwise, the likes of Gumi that have supported his boys in such criminal behaviors should be questioned and called to question. But it's so unfortunate that the criminals are roaming about, going about, in fact, daring the government and being receiving compensations and living a fictitious life, flirting. You can see how they are displaying the proceed of crime, the proceed of criminality, of adoption, which should be a capital punishment. Adopting young school children, subjecting them to such psychological, emotional, and physiological trauma, exploitation, sexual exploitations, and the rest of them should be a war crime, a crime that should be condemned by all international uh, communities. Of course, it should be considered as an act of terrorism, and this is what Gumi represents and is advocating for. It's rather unfortunate. Gumi has no moral standard to discuss issues of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, but because Mazen Nnamdi Kanu detects and dislikes, abhors such level of criminality condoned by Gumi. So if there is anyone that should be questioned or called to question by the Nigerian government and the security operative, Gumi should be number one. He has better knowledge of the antecedents and who these people represent. Oftentimes, he has made it very clear that these people are his people. They are the northern children are indulged rather than giving them hope and a life, a dignified life. They rather turn them to an instrument of hostility and subjugation, becoming a nuisance, constituting nuisance to the general society. It's rather unfortunate this is happening. One should have expected Gumi to have been cautioned or called to question, but of no avail. Such never happens in a country where there are different set of rules applied to different people at the same time. It's rather unfortunate. Now, Mazen Nandeko, what was the offense of Mazen Nandekano? Gumi should ask Shetima, who went to the United Nations General Assembly and affirmed that the rights of self-determination is an inalienable right given to God, given to men by God, which cannot be usurped by not even an organized institution like the government has no right to usurp the right to self-determination, advocating for the Palestinian state. This same applies to every other society or people. The likes of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, the indigenous people of Biafra leader, who stands on equity, fairness, and justice for everyone, not just for his own people. Just as one of the Major, one of the prophets in the Eastern region, said it, that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is the only good man, of course, in the Eastern region, who meant good for everybody, not just being selfish, not just ripping off, of course, the people's resources at his own advantage and leisure. But he rejected all these inducements, lobbying, bribe, and the rest of them. He stood for the people. That's why it becomes a threat to this political elite who would want to subject the Nigerian population to endless exploitations and the rest of them. What was the offense of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu? Nothing short of the position expressed by Shetima, the vice president, that it is the right of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu to advocate for self-determination, especially when he felt threatened within, of course, a society or within a configuration known as Nigeria. These people are facing existential threats. Of course, they are being attacked. His house is being invaded, and there are whole lots of evidence bordering on marginalization, subjugation. I mean, the wounds of the civil war has not healed, and there is no deliberate intention by the government, of course, to lead that reconciliation and healing process. And there can't be true healing except there is sincerity, justice is being addressed, or the level of injustice meted against the indigenous people of Biafra is being addressed, just as Philip F. Young, the second in command to General Ojukwu, said, the internal leader of the Biafran sovereign state. Of course, that is just the case. If there is no justice and the perceived injustice is not addressed, there's no way you can talk about building a system. Of course, has Nigeria recovered from the civil war? Unfortunately, the question is no. After the bloody civil war targeted against the Eastern people, predominantly the Igbo and the Eastern brothers, unfortunately, Nigeria have not known peace, not even. It has gotten worse than ever. Those who conspired against the defenseless citizens and the indigenous of the Eastern region who are only asking and defending their rights to life, which is an inalienable right that no institution of state can usurp. But they were heavily bombarded. Schools, churches, public gatherings are bombarded by this Nigerian military and in collaboration with other external forces to subdue and subjugate the people and silence them. Such injustice has not been addressed despite the no victor, no vanquish pronounced by Gowon, who is in his 90s today, but have refused to admit the reality on ground. Unfortunately, Ojukwu told him that what you did to the people of Biafrans, you will be alive to watch it happen to your own people, more worse than you could envisage. it is the reality unfolding today. Unfortunately, the younger generations who are not part of this, but their own forefathers have eaten a sour grape, and today their teeth is itching them. It's so unfortunate today that they are now reaping what they never saw or what they were not aware when it was sown. But God is a living witness today to the declaration of the Dim Chukwuemeka or the Megwechukwu. Back to the discussion with Sheikh Gumi. What morality, what effrontery, what audacity to bask in such euphoria of deception, of possibly seeking relevance, trying to incriminate Mazin Nnamdi Kanu, who has done no wrong. Of course, the lead counsel to Mazin Nnamdi Kanu has filed an appeal to challenge the credibility of such unlawful sentence of Mazin Nnamdi Kanu. You can't build nothing something or nothing. It is in consequence and based on the foregoing, of course, the defending counsels has the right to argue the case before the court. So Gumi should find a way to go and begin to count his losses. Unfortunately, he owes Nigeria an explanation. The reason why he is justifying the criminality going on in the northern region. He's saying that IPOB are killing police and the rest of them. IPOB, indigenous people of Biafra, has come openly to denounce such claims. Of course, recall the statement of the chief executive officer of Imo State, Hope Uzodinma, who said, anybody blaming IPOB for the insecurity going on in Imo State is wrong. That the insecurity was engineered by certain vested interests, the political elite, the rivals, political rivals in Imo State who are seeking every opportunity to discredit his administration and possibly to force him out of office. The records are there. They are speaking. The likes of Sheikh Gumi will turn deaf ear to such statement coming from Hope Uzodinma, of course, who unfortunately have not denied his position today. And you cannot lie because the internet have all these things recorded where Gumi was justifying the criminality of the terrorist groups laying ambush. Look at how people are being killed, slaughtered, and yet Sheikh Gumi is justified dead. People are being kidnapped even after paying ransom, and Sheikh Gumi negotiating. He must have a fair share of whatever is going on or knowledge of whatever is transpiring. He shouldn't be denied or not being aware of the realities. He has the templates of these people. He visits them occasionally. Often he knows their hideout and their antecedents, their mission and what they represent. And he has a sympathy for them, for defending them constantly. I mean, appearing to be their spokesperson. And we all are watching and observing what is going on. The killings of and the infections of military bases and camps. Who is responsible for that in the north? So several occasions, Bruno militaries look at the ambush being led to the point that a general in Nigerian military was brought down in such a horrifying nature. What is happening to Sambisa Forest? According to Garadima, they are saying, the terrorists are saying that even when a fly steps in Sabisa, they have seen the person already, which means it is high networked terrorism with high digital and intelligence, of course, oppression going on. Rather unfortunate. What effrontery, what moral standard has Gumi to even demand to advocate for Mazin Nnamdi Kanu? On what basis? He should advocate for the people his own boys have been killing, destroying, overrunning communities in the name of bandits, in the name of these are pure terrorists, for crying loud. Anybody calling them terrorists, I mean, bandits is just being economical with the truth. These are pure terrorists whose mission is to kill, to destroy, and to shatter. Of course, it's sort of unfortunate, but that is the reality happening today, and we are living that reality. So the Chief Gumi should be asked to give account of the killings, the massacring, the infections of several communities, and forcefully occupation of those communities, which hopefully the U.S. government is coming with a template to address such abnormalities and crime against humanity. People are being rounded up. Women, pregnant women, are being raped in. I mean, and their stomach, their pregnancy is being emptied, and the fetus is being killed, fed to the dogs and the rest of them. You have never seen Gumi condemn so start killings and the rest of them. Rather, he will find a way to justify the reason why they are killing. You can imagine saying that these people are not captured in the budget. Which of the budget? Which Nigerian citizen have benefited from the budget? The budget allocations, the North has the highest share of the budget allocations, and most of the federal projects are being cited in the North. Is it the responsibility of the Southerner to develop the North? The North is what it is. Even the little light you are seeing in the North is because of the Southerners who migrated there, who engaged in commerce and building of industries and the rest of the. Otherwise, there have not been any collective effort on the part of the northern people, especially the Fulanese, the Caliphate and the rest of them, to develop the North. It's rather unfortunate. As big as Sokoto is, it's being considered one of the poorest states in Nigeria. But they collect allocations. What do they remit back to the federal coffers and the rest of them? Despite that, they are making, of course, the resources of this country in the name of paying ransom and the rest of them, budgeting heavily for military operations and the rest of them, which oftentimes had been sabotaged, just as the U.S. ministries are saying. There is no collaboration with the Nigerian army, because the last time they tried it during Jonathan time, their operations was sabotaged, the intelligence was sabotaged, and eventually this is not going to happen today. So Gumi should get ready to give accounts of whatever he knows about the operations of the terrorists kidnapping Chibok girls. You can imagine one of the commanders coming to have the audacity to say we are going to kidnap the sitting president, Tinubu, in the matter of days. That's the height of irresponsibility and rascality expressed or condoned by Tinubu's administration, because there are certain individuals that have been fingered responsible for the sponsoring and expansion of this terrorism. But yet, Tinubu lacks the courage and the political will to address them and call them to question. It's rather unfortunate. Mieti Allah have been designated as a terrorist organization and have been faulted for being responsible for the Christian genocide and the killings in the north, the attack of the military and the rest of them. It's rather unfortunate that Gumi could have the effrontery to discuss Nnamdi Kanu, an innocent man who is only advocating for justice, equity, and fairness for all. Let me have your own take regarding this development, and of course, via the comment section, let us know what you think about this development. Gumi advocating to push for pardon for Nnamdi Kanu, why the criminals are being heard, supported, and their actions justified. What an irony. Thanks for watching. But don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on the notification buttons so that you can get the videos once it's been uploaded. Have a great day.